to it. And in fact, we had several people who were unable to attend the webinar and wanted to hear about it, see if we could actually present it again. So here we are. The webinar will be Fast Track Your Work Breakdown Structure with Mind Maps. And Brandon Conrad is our speaker of MatchWare. And I had seen this particular program, this software. We had presented something almost a year ago, and it was just, to me, it was outstanding. And I met with the folks that actually put this program together at the PMI New Orleans conference, the North American conference in New Orleans. And after speaking to Brandon for a while, we thought, well, why don't we get this back up again and let people see how this software works, how the program works, how you can use mind mapping to do a really great job of pulling together your work breakdown structure. So that's what our plan is today. For Brandon to give us some background on it and talk about how you can pull all this together and do a better job of planning. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a few words about International Project Management Day. If you could just advance the slide to the next slide. Okay, International Project Management Day is November 6th of 2014. It is the first Thursday of November every year. In 2013, the conservative estimates on the number of people that were engaged in events for International Project Management Day was just a little over 100,000 people. And there were multiple events around the world ranging from small luncheons to coffee break recognition sessions to actually full-blown conferences in many cities. In particular, the two that come to mind was in the UK. They have something called Synergy, and they sold out. I think it was over 350 people attended that session, and the New Jersey chapter does one every year, and they also had 300, 400 people attend. The point of International Project Management Day is it's not a celebration. It's really about recognition. Project managers do an awful lot of work, and one of my quotes that I created that I repeat all of the time is that you can see the value of project management in any skyline. If we didn't have project managers, then many of the things that we enjoy today, our homes, the businesses that we work, our cars and smartphones and things like that, wouldn't even exist. So it also, whether or not you consider project management a profession, the way I see it is that it is an unappreciated profession, and therefore we needed to come up with a way to recognize project managers for what they do, regardless of the size of the project, whether you're in IT or construction or aerospace or even the entertainment industry. A tremendous amount of effort and work and talent is necessary and goes into any particular project. So it's a day of recognition and acknowledgement. Just a couple of things here. First of all, we do emphasize acknowledgement of project managers, project teams, program managers, and things like that. So get your management, get your executives on board to this. If you are going to coordinate an event, consider working with other organizations such as the Project Management Institute, local chapters, or there's International Project Management Association and many, many other associations. If you have plans, post them at www.internationalpnday.org, and we do have information on that website about how to actually plan an event, and also take a look at people and organizations that have presented events in the past. We have information about gaining governmental proclamations. We've had many governors and mayors around the country, especially the U.S., who have proclaimed the day as International Project Management Day for New York City, for Nashville, for Las Vegas, believe it or not. Okay. If you're an organization that sells a product or service to project managers, many organizations are offering discounts for people who attend IPM Day functions or just as an acknowledgement for project managers. And you can certainly post the IPM Day graphic on the website. And we do have a store on the website where you can actually purchase some items in recognition of project managers, International Project Management Day logo items. So one other thing, and let me turn it over to Brandon, is that we do need your help with a number of activities. We need a group of people to help us with things like keeping the website up to date, to organize and help us with our webinars, to schedule webinars, to find speakers, to be speakers, to work with us to actually plan some official events that will be scheduled for this year. So put the November 6th on your calendar. If you're interested, you can contact me directly at saladispmp@msn.com. You can also get more information on the website. So with that, that's my my information about International Project Management Day. And right now, I'd like to turn this over to Brendan Conrad, who is going to talk to us about fast-tracking the work breakdown structure through mind mapping. So Brandon, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Frank. And I'll just kind of jump right into this. Typically, you know, I'm doing this presentation in person, and whether it be in North America at PMI chapters at the Global Congress, or over in Germany at the GPM chapters, also the Project Challenge and Prince 2 chapters. So this idea of mind mapping works through multiple methodologies. It's not just considered one methodology that this is best for. The other benefit sometimes when you're doing this in person, because the first question I usually ask is, how many people are familiar with mind mapping? And without a doubt, if I'm doing this presentation in North America, only about 25% of the people raise their hands and are familiar with it. If I'm doing this over in Europe somewhere, it seems just opposite, where 75% of the people are familiar with mind mapping. So I don't get too much into the theory of mind mapping. The only thing that you really need to know is that it is a structure and it explodes outwards. And just like in a work breakdown structure, it's just the organic version of it as opposed to the linear version. The big idea with mind mapping, it engages both sides of the brain. So it's not just a left brain thinker's tool or a right brain thinker's tool. It engages both sides in a really organic way to view the information. Now, because it engages both sides of the brain, they realize, well, what's this great for? It's great for brainstorming and planning. So typically, instead of the whiteboard sessions or sticky note sessions, you know, this is up on the wall. And just like the mind map, you know, the WBS, it's just a linear format. You know, you still have the deliverables and work packages, same information, just displayed a little bit differently. Now, I won't read every single one of these slides to you, but I think the thing to key in here is that it's an increase in productivity by about 25%. And that increase in productivity is because it's coupled with technology. So you're not having to recreate the data over and over through the project life cycle. And I'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later, but just understand that's kind of the key takeaway from this presentation. Now, a little game we're going to play. So this slide's blank on purpose. The next slide is going to be a bunch of numbers, and they're going to be in a random order. What I want you to do is try to find number 1, then number 2, then number 3, then number 4. So count as high as you can sequentially, starting with number 1. And what this exercise is going to show you is how the mind and the brain processes information. Here we go. And again, try to find number 1 and just count sequentially. All right. So typically, people get to, you know, maybe 4 or 5. If you got over 5, you're doing a pretty good job. If you got under 5, don't worry about it. But what this represents is, let's say we're in a planning and brainstorming session, and everybody's throwing these ideas out there, and no one's capturing anything. It's just random ideas being thrown out. It's hard for our brains to process that information when there's no structure around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show these numbers again, and I'm going to add a little structure. Now try to count. You should now easily see that you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You start to recognize a pattern because there's structure. So with a lot of information, if you put some structure around it, your brain processes it a bit better. And this represents, let's say we're now still in that planning and brainstorming session, but we're capturing this with a whiteboard, with a flip chart, with sticky notes. So as these ideas are being thrown out there, we're putting some structure around them so we can process them a little bit better. So what in the world does this have to do with mind mapping? Well, I'm going to show you the next slide is going to be a slide with information, but it's going to be put in a mind map. So now, in about 4 or 5 seconds, you can see where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do when I get there. Because we're taking a lot of information now, and now we're putting it in a structure of a mind map, very organic. Now I'm going to take that same information, and I'm going to put it in a linear format. It's going to take you 20 or 30 times longer to figure out that same information. And by the time you get all the way down to the bottom, do you remember what you were reading at the very top? So again, now we're talking about organic versus linear. It's information in a structure, but the structure that you can process the information more quickly in is the mind map. So a lot of times this is where we see the communication breakdown happen, whether it be in corporations, whether it be in groups, whether it be with spouses. But 65% of all mistakes in the workplace happen because of a miscommunication. That's not because we don't understand or don't know how to communicate to our coworkers. It's because people process information differently. Some people like to process it in that organic look. Some people like to process it in more of a linear look. And consequences of this, pretty straightforward here. If we're talking in project terms, obviously missing deadlines, obviously over budget, different expectations, pretty straightforward there. Let me know there's a comment on kind of losing the sound, so let me know if I'm fading kind of in and out. What is the solution to this? We see it with obviously mind mapping, replacing that kind of sticky note and whiteboard session, and then coupled with technology. Because not only do you use the mind map to process the information, if you add that with technology, you're not going to have to recreate the data, which I'll show you a little bit later. And of course, why is this important? Obviously optimizing that WBS process, and as I've kind of reiterated, you don't have to recreate the data through the life cycle. So that's the PowerPoint. What I'm going to show you is actually how this mind mapping and technology work. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a tool called MindView, but know that there's a lot of different mind mapping tools out there. A couple ones just to mention off, MindJet. They've been around a long, long time. They're a really good mind mapping tool. If you just want to get started with mind mapping, I always say choose FreeMind. As the title says, it's free. So you can kind of get in there and see if this is something that would be helpful or useful to you. And also, well, let me mention the differences between some of the free tools and some of the more expensive tools is going to be like the Microsoft Office integration and the project management features. So let me just kind of show you, again, how this works. There we go. Just checking the chat. So imagine we're kind of in this planning, this brainstorming session. We want to brainstorm around something generic. Let me open this up real quick. There we go. So again, imagine we're kind of in this planning, this brainstorming session. Instead of the sticky notes or the whiteboards, this is up on the wall, and we're going to brainstorm about something generic like a product launch. Now just pressing enter, you can get these different work streams. And I always kind of tell people as a best practice, don't worry about where this information lands, because everything's going to be based on drag and drop, which I'm going to show you in just a little bit. And that's how 99.9% of the tools like this work on the market: enter, insert, drag, drop. So all I really did there was I pressed insert to get different levels, and then I pressed enter to get different items on that level. Now, one thing I like doing, excuse me, is throwing a numbering schema on this. So visually, you can see that it starts at the 1 o'clock position and then just kind of works itself around. Now, I also mentioned, excuse me, that everything's based on drag and drop as well. So if I click on, let's say, planning, I can easily just drag and drop and move this information around. And the nice part about this is that it's we'll start renumbering everything based on that hierarchy as well. So that all should be pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do is grab a template real quick. This is just going to be a bigger version of what I was working on. So let's say, for instance, we're still kind of in this planning, this brainstorming, and we want to type notes on a certain topic, for instance. So I'm going to launch this text note editor. It has the same functionality as Word. So let's say new salesperson, new. And if you close this, you get a nice little paper clip, indicating something's attached there. You can also pull in pictures. A lot of people will use this as more of a presentation tool, this mind mapping, because PowerPoint is almost becoming, death by PowerPoint right now. So again, just to pull in pictures, find it anywhere you have it saved, double click, automatically resize and puts it on the branch for you. Now, same situation with any type of file. So for instance, like under 1.3, you can attach maybe like an Excel spreadsheet. You just find it, and if you roll over it and you left click, it's going to take you right over to Excel, or in this case, you've got that marketing budget plan. And the reason I show that is because these mind mapping tools will host all your project artifacts. So any move or any linking over to SharePoint, servers, everything's here in this structure for you. So as you're moving through this project lifecycle, this becomes like a simplified content management system. And again, the majority of the mind mapping tools in the market function just like this. Now, in the presentation, or the PowerPoint presentation, I was talking about that organic versus linear. So again, you've got this mind map, which is very organic view of the information, but then you can easily switch this into something a little bit more linear, like a work breakdown structure. And again, you're not having to recreate the data. That was a major theme that I was trying to point out with that increase in productivity, and to be able to switch this from organic to linear without having to recreate the data. You have quite a few other layouts in tools like these, depending on how you want to show the information. So again, back to that topic about not having to recreate the data. So let's just say we're kind of in this planning and this brainstorming meeting, and we want the minutes to the meeting, or we might want the WBS dictionary. So what you can do is you can export this directly to a Word document. Advanced export just allows you to pick a template, which I'll show you. Now it's going to export using that hierarchy. So planning is going to be the first chapter, and then it just kind of works itself around clockwise. So this is the image. It automatically generates an interactive table of contents. And anything that we had in that map gets transferred over to this Word document. So all your project artifacts, all your notes gets transferred over to Word. So it really becomes the start of that WBS dictionary. Now the really nice part about this is it's always a two-way street. So you can take this information, make any changes to it, then import it back in, and it's going to update a new map with those changes. So again, it goes back to not having to recreate the data no matter which Microsoft Office product that you use. And just 1 second here. Just checking the chat. You can also export this over to a PowerPoint presentation. So if you have to be in front of stakeholders or management and they want to see this in a PowerPoint, that's easily accomplished as well. So now that we've kind of brainstormed, we've optimized that WBS with the mind map, now what we can do is start adding scheduling information to this WBS or this mind map, whatever you want to call it. So if you're familiar with MS Project, what this does is it creates the parent branches as summary tasks, and it changes your 7-day week into a 5-day working week, just like you're going to find in Microsoft Project. So, for instance, like setup team, you can adjust the durations, start end dates, resource or priority levels, resources. With these resources, you can do effort-driven tasks. You can do project calendars, rates per resource. So using these mind mapping tools, there's a whole other resource management side of the software as well. But at its basic level, you're just adding the scheduling information in this map. Now, the reason that's important is because you can actually show this information on the branch level, which I'll show you here. So again, if you're going into a management meeting, a lot of times this is a lot more digestible than getting, so heavily involved in the Gantt chart or trying to use a Gantt chart as a presentation tool. So now what I see a lot is I'll be working with a client or customer in their planning and brainstorming meetings. They're using this on a whiteboard, using on sticky notes, the flip charts. At the end of the session, everybody rips out a camera phone, takes a picture of it, and then goes back and recreates it into, let's say, Microsoft Project. So a couple problems with that. One, you're recreating the data, so it's time-consuming. Two, is everybody recreating the data accurately? So to avoid that, again, using these tools as a productivity tool, you just right-click and you change this entire view into a mind map. Now this one's still built into the mind mapping software. It's really just a lighter version of MS Project so that you can drag and drop durations, drag and drop constraints, even start dragging and dropping these dependencies. And as you do this, everything that you change here is updating that mind map or that WBS as well. So let me do this. I'm going to grab another template, kind of speed it up. This template I'm grabbing just has a little bit more of the scheduling information. Obviously, I know a lot of the people on this line use MS Project, so we still have that task information box. So, constraint types, predecessor types, lead times, lag times, whatever you want. Now, I know there's a question out there. I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, does it export over to Project? Because that's what we have standardized in our company. The answer, of course, is yes. So you can export this directly to Project, which I'll show you. And this is everything that we had over in the mind mapping software. Now it's just over in project. And once again, it's a two-way street. So if you have an existing project file that you want to import in, you've got that option. Yep, I'll pause. I think there's a question that was posted.
Yeah, Brandon, this is Frank. Let me just read that question for you,
Sure.
because it was tied directly into something that you were talking about. Let me just see where this comes from. I don't have a name for it. It says, once you export the data, the data can take a new life of its own. Are there restrictions on what you can do in the Word doc, for example, so that you don't cause it to be impossible to import it back into mind map? Wondering if it is an unconditional two-way street.
Yeah, that's a good question. And this goes with all the Microsoft Office integration. And each one of these tools will be a little bit more or less sophisticated when you import and export. It's kind of like, I'll use MS Project as an example as well. This tool that I'm showing you doesn't do any type of resource leveling. It doesn't do any type of baselining. So when you export over to Project, if you use those high-level features and you import them in, you're going to lose that information. Like the Word example, I'll kind of show you. If I want to type maybe some notes here and maybe add a new branch. This new branch, if you use the heading style up here at the top, is going to act like a main parent branch when you import it into the software. Heading 2 is going to be a sub-branch. Heading 3 is going to be a sub-sub. So the way, how the software knows to import and build the map is based on this generic heading style in Word. And then any notes you put under here will go in the text note editor when you import it back in. But again, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, people really kind of underestimate how large these programs are. And even experienced project managers only use about 20–25% of what project's capable of. We're not going to, the mind mapping software that I'm showing you isn't going to mimic every feature in the Microsoft Office programs. But again, the majority of what you're going to use or edit with will be able to be imported back in. So I hope that answered that question. And if any other questions like that pop up during this, feel free to interrupt me. I won't take the whole hour in this presentation, so if something's relevant as I'm showing it, feel free to post a question about it. So I'm going to jump back over to...
There is one more question that just came in.
Sure.
Hi, Brandon. Yeah, there's one more question that came up. This is from Ellen. It says, can the mind map be imported into a customized template rather than the standardized MSP template?
Yeah. Either way you want to do that, it can. I think the question kind of goes back to, let's say I want to export. Let me go over to this, back to this original WBS. Or mind map. When you export out, and I can speak on this tool specifically, you can choose a Word template. So if you have a company template that you want to export the information out to, you can go ahead and do that. You can also do the same thing with PowerPoint. So if you're making a PowerPoint presentation and you guys have company templates, you can export this information into a customizable template based on your company needs. And the vice versa is true. So let's say you want to design a custom style within the MindView software. maybe it is company colors, maybe you want to put a logo in there. So when you import in, you just switch to that custom style. That's fine too. So yeah, either you're importing or exporting, you can do custom templates. Good question. Cool. And again, feel free to fire away.
Okay, there is one more I'm going to ask you. Yeah, this is another one that's associated with that. It says, what kind of links exist between the software modules disk location? And that's from Ellen.
Say that one more time.
Okay, the question is, what kind of links exist between the software modules? And then she has disk location. So I guess it's the connection between the modules.
I'm going to assume maybe the connection between like the Microsoft Office integration. There's no real synchronization. It is a physical import-export. So just because you make a change in Word, it doesn't automatically sync back to these programs. It's a physical import. Now, another way that I may interpret that question as well is that you can hyperlink to anything. So if you can hyperlink over to any other proprietary software to link it together, if there isn't a direct import-export, you can also import-export through XML. So you can create that integration with another piece of software if you needed to. If I didn't explain that exactly correct, feel free to elaborate on the question. I'll give it another shot.
Okay, there'll be a few more questions, I think, as we progress here. But if there's some additional items you want to talk about, we can do that, and then I'll hold off and we'll ask some additional questions a little bit later on. Okay?
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. So going back to this MS project, it is a two-way street. So you can take an existing project file and you can import it in. The reason that's important is because, again, what I see a lot with clients is that you're going to be sitting there with them, and you're going to go into a management meeting, maybe your weekly status updates, maybe with stakeholders. And the thing is, you're going to have to recreate all this information to something a little bit easier for them to understand. So we spend a couple hours recreating this into like an Excel spreadsheet, into a PowerPoint presentation. But instead of doing all that, again, remember the major theme of this is not having to recreate data through the life cycle. So what we can do is we can take that Gantt chart and we can flip this into a timeline. And this is the same information, it's just displayed a little bit differently. There are also different filtering options for you. People that rely a lot more on Agile or Scrum is that you can filter in your sprints. So if I just want to filter my start and end date on 2-week sprints, then you can do a little bit more Agile methodology with this as well. Or maybe I just want to filter on resources or completions. Any view you can use the filter to really kind of show what you want. You don't have to show every single item or every single work package when it's on the timeline. And kind of staying with the communication theme there, you also have the ability to export these over to project reports. Now these project reports are going to be based in HTML. The reason for that, it just makes them really easy to share or maybe post on SharePoint so that management can come in and click on any one of these reports on the left-hand side. Now I'll show you a couple of these. One is unstarted tasks. So it's going to show the summary task up above. And if I click on any one of these branches, or sorry, any one of these summary tasks, it's going to show all the unstarted tasks down below. Also, you've got resource management. So, here's the resource, and it's going to show over allocation. And then here's the another resource shows under allocation. So again, just another way to communicate the information without having to recreate it. So just to show you, with these tools, you can export out to the entire Microsoft Office package, HTML, project reports, PDF, any number of ways you can show this. And again, that goes back to two things. One, it's how people process information, that linear versus organic. And two, not having to recreate the data. So it really simplifies the project lifecycle. Now, what I'm going to show you, a real practical application, a real-world application to this. And to set this up, I'm sure a lot of people on this line have heard of PMI. It's the Project Management Institute. Gives a lot of certifications through the Institute. And as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of times I go around to chapters and I work with different chapters using mind mapping. Well, in particular, I was working with PMI Montgomery. And what was happening with PMI Montgomery is that every year with these PMI chapters, they get new board members. So new board members come on in August. They decide how do we increase, the visibility of our local chapter. How do we grow our local chapter? So they sit down and write everything down, and what happens is they put it in a Word document, which I'll show you. Now keep in mind, these are all volunteers, so this is not their full-time job, if you will. So let me show you what this Word document looks. So they call this a transition document. And if you scroll down, it's going to give each team an example of the resource, the list of operations, the projects for this person. Now, there's two problems. One, every year they get new board members, so every year they have to update this and maybe try to pick up the pieces of last year's projects. The other problem that they were finding is that this Word document is 36 pages long, or 37, I should say. So to give an overview of this is very, very challenging. So what they decided to do, yes, this Word document is nice, but what they also did is they created an Excel file. So this Excel file has the same information, but it's just easier to get an overview instead of that 37-page transition document. So they color-coded each team. You can see the owner, the resource. You can see the end date. So again, it's the same information. It's just a little bit easier to get an overview. And because obviously this is the Project Management Institute, now what they would do is they'd take all this information and they would put it into an MS project file for a schedule as they're moving forward. So it's 3 different files with the same information accomplishing the same thing, but it depends on who is looking at it and how they process the information. So when I started working with them, what we did is I took this transition document, and all I did was I imported it in to the mind mapping tool. And what it did is it created this document for me. I color-coded it just like in the Excel file, but if you expand this, each one of these paper clips indicates the information that was in the Word document. So now what we did was we imported it into a mind mapping software. Now we can quickly and easily get an overview of this, so it really eliminated the Excel file. It's got all the same information that you're going to find in the Word document, but if someone wants to see it in a Word document, all we have to do is export it out to Word. And it eliminates recreating that schedule. So now all we have to do is right-click. We can turn this into a Gantt chart or a timeline. So now this transition document, you're not having to update the data in 3 different places. And when the new board members come on, we're not having to recreate a whole new file. We just replace a couple items. We know what we've done last year. And we continue to grow the chapter much easier since, again, we're all volunteers. We need to do it as quick as possible. So what I'll do, that's the presentation. I hope the takeaway really here, it doesn't matter which mind mapping tool you use, it's the technique, and it's because you can process the information a lot easier, and it's the time savings. You're not having to recreate the data over and over and over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this slide is for the PDU information, and I'll kind of hand it back over to Frank. If there's any questions, you know, like I said, feel free to plug away.
Okay, Brandon, something that comes up a lot, and I think that maybe a lot of the people that are on here are either project managers or they might be managers or project managers or even team members. You know, the WBS is often referred to as the cornerstone of planning, okay? You know, just about everything that is generated in a project plan is somehow connected to the WBS. You know, you get a good picture of the project, you look at the complexity of the project, you know, people get to see, you know, exactly what needs to be done and how it all folds up and so on. We use it for estimating, you know, bottom-up estimating and so on. The challenge, though, is that in many corporations, and I have to separate this out between, you know, large construction type projects that run into the multi-millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and those projects that are more, what we'll say, corporate type projects that might run 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a few months, maybe run into a couple of $100,000 and so on. So we've got, you know, lots of different projects. But the challenge that most project managers face is to actually get their team members, who are generally coming from various functional groups, to actually attend a meeting to develop a work breakdown structure. So do you have any thoughts based on people that you have talked to about this, and maybe clients that are using this particular software? You know, how do you get your team members to buy into the importance of a work breakdown structure and to show them that the use of the tools such as mind mapping might actually ease their pain a little bit and really show how valuable it is to have a work breakdown structure?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a really tough one to answer, because that is the pain point in initiating a lot of project plans. You know, I always explain it to them when I'm going into clients or customers. We all remember when we were in school and we had to write like a research paper. And the teacher would always say, hey, you got to do an outline first. If you do an outline first, your research paper is going to come out a lot better. But how many of us decided to abandon that? We jumped right into Word and we started typing. And it never turned out as good. The flow wasn't as good. It's the same thing with the WBS. You know, the WBS is the outline to a research paper, the WBS to the project plan. And, you know, I think with project team members that are reluctant to get into a WBS meeting, you know, you just kind of have to show them that it works. And I think, you know, adopting tools like this, it's a little bit more fun to do tools like this. And if you show them that it's easier because you're not having to recreate the information, you know, I think people are going to kind of jump on board a little bit. But, you know, that's a tough one to answer because that is a real pain point.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges. I mean, I think that all of us that are managing projects, or even those people who are involved in the teaching of project management, the goal is we've got to find ways to streamline things. We've got to get people to come in and work with us, and not you know, the typical kicking and screaming that goes on to get people to attend these meetings. This is much more fun. It's certainly a lot easier to organize than the yellow sticky approach in one of the slides that you showed earlier. And so it's something that I think that all project managers need to kind of think about. It's, you know, it's streamlining. I'm careful to say that we can't make project management simple, but we can make it simpler to use by using appropriate tools and using a lot of common sense in it. So this, to me, is sort of a common sense approach. There was a comment in the question section there about very interesting use of mind mapping for the chapter. Thank you very much. So that's actually, I was taking some interest into that also. That was very unique, and I like the way you took all those documents and were able to display it so clearly in one screen, and then you can certainly add in and click on those paper clips. Really pretty good.
Well, and kind of to add, with that WBS challenge, no one wants to do more work, and a lot of people look at the WBS as extra work going into a project plan. So if you can kind of show them that, one, it's not more work, and either with a tool or without a tool, and people don't want to change the way they've typically done things. So you got to be able to show them that, one, it's not more work, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. If you can demonstrate those two things, people are a lot more willing to adapt to change, because it doesn't matter what tool you purchase. If it just sits on your computer and you don't use it, it's not going to be worth anything.
Well, I think that we all have to be somewhat creative. We got to find ways to get people in and to use the most appropriate tools available to get the job done. And to, even if you have to do this in kind of piece parts or incrementally, I think people would see the value of using this kind of a tool. There is a question from Walter. It says, in order to represent a program, is it possible to create a hierarchy of maps within the same file?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of program and portfolio managers, the example I was showing up on my screen had product launch, and then each one of the main branches were a deliverable. So what a lot of people will do is have, let's say, the middle one, or the middle root, be IPM projects for 2014. And then each one of the branches, main branches, will be Project 1, Project 2, Project 3, let's say Project 4. So then you're looking at things in a portfolio or program view. And there's different ways to manage that information. You can isolate certain projects without seeing everything else. So there's a bunch of different filter and focus features that allow you to manage a lot of that information. But yeah, a lot of people set it up in that portfolio or program view. And the nice part about that is that you can manage your resources across the portfolio or program to see over and under allocation of resources, which is one of the main problems a lot.
Okay, I have a question. Well, I think it's a statement from Mike. It says, I think the two-way road piece is not quite the case. It's more a two-way road, but only bicycles are allowed, not cars and trucks.
Right.
I guess I'm not sure how to interpret that exactly, but I guess there's some limitations in the exchange.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty good analysis of that. And I think, if it was a true synchronization with the Microsoft Office products, there was a mind mapping convention in the UK. And a lot of the main mind mapping players on the market were there. And one of the major topics was synchronizing with Microsoft Office. The problem with that, when you develop with Microsoft, these programs that they have like MS Project are so big. And I mentioned before that people only use about 20% of its capabilities. The problem when you start really getting into some of these programs, they're actually really, really buggy. So to synchronize with a program like that is very, very difficult because it's not consistent in how it acts. So in the mind mapping world right now, we all know that synchronization is powerful, but the problem is, do you synchronize with every single feature in MS Project? If that's the case, that's going to be pretty crazy. Or like what we do, and I say we, the mind mapping companies, what we do now is we limit it to the majority of what you're going to use in the Microsoft Office programs, and then if you have to do a little bit of tweaking on either side, you might have to, but it'll at least get the majority of your data in and out of these different programs. So I think the analogy. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, based on your demo on that PMI chapter, I would think that you could create a program hierarchy to actually see the big picture and actually break it down into some detail and only extract certain information from MS Project or post it back to MS Project. I think that the part of the question is, can we see the big picture of the program here and then develop a hierarchy that you can actually drill it down into some detail? And I would say that based on what you've shown, you can do that.
Yep, definitely, definitely. And, even when I'm working with, like the Siemens and the Boeings of the world, where they're using like P6 or, project with, project server, then in that case, these tools become more of a front-end and back-end tool to your main scheduling piece. One, to create the WBS and get it over to whatever tool you want. And then the second part of that is, using it as more of a communication tool to, higher levels. So it depends on what your usage is to your main scheduling tool if you're using it to its fullest capabilities.
Okay, there is a question here. Actually, it says, great presentation. Is there a website URL to get the product information that you can share? And I'm looking at the screen here, and two things. One is you should put your contact information on there, Brandon, your email, and also the website for your organization. And also, I just want to make a quick note that on the bottom of that page it says November 7th. The date in 2014 for International Project Management Day is November 6th, the first Thursday. Okay, so November 7th was in 2013. Okay, so let me see if there's any other questions here. It says something, I suspect once you export to MS Project and add all the leveling dependencies, etc., you can't really put it back into mind map and then change it and put it back into Project without data loss. So I guess this switching back and forth from Microsoft to do updates and then back to the software of the mind map and then back to there are some limitations there as to what can be transferred.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be some limitations, but to address that one specifically, you can take it over to Project and do your resource leveling and then bring it back in, and it's going to keep that resource leveling that you already did in Project because you can do effort-driven tasks, resource calendars. So that functionality is there. It's just not the resource leveling part. So if you want to resource level and bring it back in, that's quite all right. But I think, like Frank mentioned, it's not MS Project. There are some limitations of importing and exporting that you just have to be aware of.
Okay, Brandon. Let's see. It says here from Michael. Thank you, Brandon and Frank. The approach makes what has frequently been difficult less painful. So you've scored a few points there, Brandon. The key here is, we really are looking for a streamlined approach, and these types of tools that are out there will help. And I think that all of us as project managers, again, getting back to simplify as much as possible. Look for ways to get people to enjoy coming to your meetings. If you can use certain tools like this to make your meetings more effective and more time productive, that would be certainly the key. One of the things that I bring up continuously would be in Dr. Kersner's book, Dr. Harold Kersner's book, A Project Management, a Systems Approach. In the very beginning of the book, he talks about the 16 points to project management maturity. And number 12 on that list happens to be to eliminate non-productive meetings. And I'm thinking that the WBS should be one of your most productive meetings. It's one of the most important meetings that have to actually create the WBS and get people to see the complexity of the project. And I'm thinking that if we can combine good facilitation and good meeting leadership with things like an agenda and an organization, and a tool like this, where the information, the brainstorming that is used, that's posted, can be organized so quickly that it becomes very effective. And one of my bits of advice to all project managers is that you personally should have a reputation for having excellent meetings. So I really think that these kinds of tools, plus an organized approach, keeping in mind the needs of your attendees, would create a great meeting, and also develop the kind of information, especially the work breakdown structure, that's needed to manage your project as efficiently as possible. I think that there are no other questions, Brandon, at this point in time. I'm going to just take a look and see. If you have any final comments that you want to extend to the people that are here, and also, again, Brandon put his name up and his contact information, Brandon Conrad at MatchWare.com, and www.matchware.com for information on this, plus a tool called Meeting Booster that we had a webinar on just a few days ago. So any last comments, any suggestions from you, Brandon?
No, I appreciate everybody's time, and if you do have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. This presentation is being recorded. It will be available at www.internationalpmday.org, and we are going to repeat this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern for those people who find that time frame is a little bit more convenient. And also, in closing, if you are interested in helping us out with International Project Management Day programs and events, you can contact me directly at saladispmp@msn.com, or you can go to the website, internationalpmday.org. We are also looking for speakers who have presentations that will be of interest to the worldwide project management community, and we would ask you to spread the word about International Project Management Day, and share this information with your colleagues. They might be interested in seeing this recording. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. And look out for the next webinar. We'll be posting information on that very soon. So again, thank you very much. And again, we really would appreciate your comments on how to make these webinars better. Use the email, contact Brandon, contact the IPM Day team, and remember November 6th, and plan something to acknowledge your project managers. Okay, thank you very much.
The